Luis, just taking a look at your work this week. I know we spoke about it briefly, but I want to give you more in-depth critique here. So yeah, let's take a look. I feel like a lot of the acting choices and everything, I like the acting choices. I feel like, we just need to get, maybe we can level up the sophistication in how they get expressed, right? So I'm just going to go through some of these poses and stuff. Yeah, I see that you do the jaw. Thank you for the note. But I'm going to focus mostly on the body stuff so that, maybe if we can get the body stuff cleaned up, then we can start moving on to the mouth. I think like you are not super far away from that stage. But it is a good idea to kind of get the kind of body acting performance locked down. So I'm going to play through this a couple times.
Dad loves superheroes. He believed in them. Dad loves superheroes. He believed in them.
Okay, so I'm just looking at this first part. I will remember to go on to the second part, I really hope. But anyways, one of the things I'm kind of noticing when I play through this thing in its entirety is that a lot of kind of the degree on these movements feel equally big. And I kind of think like, I'm going to give you some suggestions on maybe how we can make some of the earlier beats in this performance like slightly smaller, so that when you want to really punch home the main message of this read, that we are saving the big stuff for the strongest expression of this character and what they have to say. And so the first thing I think is just this initial head shake and reaction, saying about like dad loves superheroes, right? So I'm gonna like kind of tick here on your poses just to get the keyframes of them. I'm gonna say that this is one. I'll say that's one. This is one. This is one. This is one. That's one. I'm going to say that's kind of the same. I'm going to delete this. I forgot what this was. I'm talking about it in class. I was probably talking about spacing or something. But we'll talk about the poses overall. This is just little arm stuff, so I'm also going to kind of... Oh yeah, I'm sure those were spacing notes. I guess I'll call this a pose. That's a pose for sure. That's like a little keep alive adjust maybe. That's an anticipation down into this big expression. That's like a recovery from that. An adjustment there. Cool. I think that's kind of where we're at, so now I can jump back and forth between key poses. So I feel like this is kind of big. Maybe one of the reasons I'm feeling this is big is this torso twist here, and I like the, I kind of feel like the intention of the head shake here is a good call, but it goes so far forward and so far down, and then it pops up and then settles. It even has like maybe an overshoot on the settle and bounces back up. So I'm going to talk about just that phrase first, right? Let's see. So saying like this is your default, right? Like the pose that we're starting from. Going to like, okay, let me shrink the thing so that I can get even more specificity in here. Let me turn on the sound just a little bit to get prepped.
Dad loves...
So dad is like shaking the head, being like, what are you talking about, dad? Right? Like I like that acting choice that you have in here, but I feel like getting the body this much involved, and especially like rotating the whole torso here and then jumping back is maybe a bit much. So I'm going to try to draw what I mean, and hopefully it'll like communicate more clearly, but I feel like it's okay to have a little rotation on the body, like if we're looking at it from the side. And I'm curious as far as like what you did in your reference. if you came down as far. But let me try to act it out and see what I do. Okay, so I feel like the first thing maybe my body wants to naturally do is kind of do like a little anticipation back, you know, to anticipate a forward move, like, and maybe this is where like the shoulders would come up. So let me try to find that pose here. So this is my suggestion. I would do that. I would try coming back a little bit and have the shoulders raise up a little bit in this pose, right? And I would almost like dip the head down in this pose. And I don't know this much. It's going to be up to you. And again, like, you don't have to follow these drawings or my suggestions at all. We can just talk about like the overall feeling I'm getting from this. But I'm feeling like this would be like an anticipation into whatever the gesture is that we're going into, which is probably some like hand expression. But I feel like these shoulders come up into this anticipation. This is a little bit of a sloppy drawing. Let's see if I can clean it up a little bit for clarity. But let me see. Yeah, I think maybe it was the wrong call now that I'm trying to act it out. I'm curious as to what you did on your reference. I guess I could go back and check that out. But maybe it's better to go back here in an anticipation. So shoulders up, head back, torso rotated back a little bit, you know. I don't know how extreme to do this all. I don't think you need a whole lot, like a whole lot of extreme stuff. But if this is the head here, then we're going back up into a pose here, and this is all going to be gobbledygook, I'm sure, by the time I'm doing it. But the idea is like we're doing a small anticipation and like dad, and then when she comes out of it into the dad, I think we just kind of want it to be with the body, like you have kind of these arms out, so it's like dad. Okay, sorry to figure this out kind of in real time, but hopefully this will be helpful for you. But I think, yeah, if we're going to here, this kind of pose, here, dad, I want to make sure I'm not ignoring where we're going to go later in this piece, so I'm not just going to duplicate something. Yeah, cool. All right, cool. Good. I think then, all right, sorry. Okay. So I'm sticking with what I initially thought, that maybe it would be best to kind of come up here into like these kind of like backward fists, right? And I think you kind of get into this a little bit as well later. I think you can kind of live in this pose for a little while. And again, these are suggestions. So, but maybe like this, and then say, I don't think you have to come this far forward from this. I think you can kind of just come a little bit forward, but like keep eye contact with mom, right? And not like bury the eyes or the head too far down. And we can get a head shake in there, no problem. But then I would come here and leave it kind of palms up. And I know you have some palms up happening later, but you kind of move through it quickly. So I think you can probably like live in that palms up pose, because I feel like at this point the kid is still sort of like imploring with the mom about what dad really was about and what dad really thought, and like the mom has it all wrong, right? So put little indications of the eyes here. Like here, it's fine to like go closed on the eyes like you have them. But if I were to draw the circles just to show where the eyes are, it's kind of like, yeah, I would rotate the torso back and then have it go forward a little bit. And like, not have it move so much, you know? Like something like this. I think keeping this gesture small and leaving the biggest movement for the end of this 2-line read, right? Like something like that feels a little bit more natural. to me. And like, we don't need to bounce back out of it, right? So let me make some suggestions for these next 3 poses before we get into the next thing. I want to play it and hear the line.
Dad loves super. Dad loves super.
All right, I really like what you're doing with this coming forward, saying love superheroes, again with the palm up. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. Am I in sync? Somebody else is driving, I think. But I'm not in the sync. Who knows what that was? My apologies.
Dad loves super. Dad loves super. Dad loves super.
All right, so I think what I'm thinking is like, Dad, the arms come up for Dad. You know, this can be closed fists, or it could even be like open hands here. I think that that also would be maybe a better suggestion. But I think you can live in this and not really come down into this, and leave this for where you have the come down. Because I realized I was kind of just echoing what you already had going later.
Dad loves super.
I like when you say love superheroes. I think that that's really strong. It really plays well, right? But I feel like I would want this pose to be more appealing and maybe like a little bit better resolved. Like something I feel out of this neck and head is that your neck is here and the head is like here and the chin is like really tucked in, right? Like if I'm looking at it from the side, I feel like the chin tuck and the neck connection is all like really stacked up on themselves. And I think a way to fix that is to have the neck like more rotated forward, obviously. But because you want the ability to change from the forward position to the back position, then anything before that has to even be more forward. It's far more comfortable for people to have like a more forward leaning neck, you know. So maybe you're starting in something more like this, and then this is going to be your extreme when you go back. But like this one feels a little bit too extreme to me, and I kind of feel like that's what the model's doing. I'm also not really feeling like the shoulders raising up in something like this, so let's make sure to get the shoulders up, and maybe we can get some like stronger poses out of the arm where it's not like so foreshortened, and we get it kind of clear in silhouette. And especially like the screen left arm, especially if this is supposed to be up, maybe we can get it more up and out to the side. We don't want twinning between the two, so I drew this kind of twinned, but you know, you can play with, well, you can play with the angle. Okay, you can play with the angle. Oh, it's moving around. Sorry, you can play with the angle of one and the angle of the other just to get a little bit of difference in there as much as possible. So, you know, this is kind of like that W pose. So I think, yeah, okay, I'm gonna stick with this idea that you can kind of live in this pose a little bit longer and save the drop down for later. But all of this, again, is just trying to design like good communicating poses where this is a little bit more still, so we can read like the canvas of the face, you know? Like when I act it out, I wish there was a way I could turn on my webcam and act it out and still kind of have this, but be like, Dad, you know, you can come up here, Dad, on Dad, and hold here. Dad, you know, you could even have more micro little, so let's say this is your first pose. Your second one could just come up a little bit, right? And not be so big into like this being the B pose. I guess I'll draw that in purple. Just kind of delineate the two. And so this, like, I think you can kind of live within these same poses. So this might be, the green one is the first one where she goes, Dad, she raises up her arms. She goes, Dad loves superheroes. And then these arms could come down, and I'll use another color. Let's say orange for like a possible third pose, you know. It could be as low as this, or maybe it's more heading back, to where like the original green one was or something. But you can kind of live in this pose like Dad loves superheroes. So when I imagine the hand going up into this pose, the fingers tend to like maybe curl up more into kind of like, I'm not really good at drawing hands super well on the fly, but anyways, let's say they curl more here, and then when you go down here, they're much more like straight out, you know what I mean? But still kind of like live in this single pose for this first little beat.
Dad loves Dad loves.
And then when you go to love superheroes, let me see if I can identify exactly.
Dad loves. Dad loves.
Then on love, I really like how it feels, right? When you go love superheroes and you have this hand out here, I think all that's like fantastic. But I think you kind of have to live in this a little bit longer because like it moves through it. Where's the love one? Sorry.
Dad loves.
Yeah. Okay, it's here, so I was drawing it in the wrong spot. Let me get rid of this. My apologies again for being a little clumsy about this. But this is great. This is the love superhero pose that I really like. I think that this is an appealing pose too. I would maybe like unbreak this wrist just a little bit. Leave it more straight from there to there, because it's a really awkward thing to do, to bend your wrist like that. But also I really like how you have this chest out pose here. So I really want to keep that. That really feels strong. And the anticipation for it in here is also great. You know what I mean? I guess what I'm suggesting is we kind of live in this anticipation pose with smaller gestures until we're ready to get to that big expression, right? And that little move forward. Now this move forward is great. I feel like it's just a little bit big. You know what I mean? So like if this is your center of gravity here on this character, I like the idea of anticipating into it. Okay, we'll have to talk about the cog stuff very specifically, but if you're in this pose and we're kind of living in this up and down with the arm stuff, it's important to get little reactive things in the chest, you know, maybe going forwards and backwards, but these are small little reactive things, right? Dad loves superheroes, and they're also going to be reactive in the shoulders. You know, as the arms go up and down, they can be small little ups and drops and stuff like that. And little accents on the head too, I think is really going to sell it. You know, whenever she's like looking up through her brow like this, it's like maximum anger and maximum evil. And I don't think she's at a maximum place yet in this read. So even though like this is like a super strong pushed pose, I don't think it's appropriate for this moment in the read or the story. I may be wrong, since I don't have like the whole thing out there, and who knows what the actual audio read is gonna turn into. So I guess what I'm suggesting, to go back to a summary, is kind of settle down your cog through this thing. I do like this lean forward, but you know, it's possible, this is from the side, if someone's standing, you know, I imagine that this character is more like, when they anticipate into it, you know, maybe their center of gravity kind of moves back when they're kind of like about to lean forward into this gesture, and then when they actually do go forward into this pose, it's kind of more like a this sort of thing. You know, I'm not sure how far forward this character can be leaned without them looking like they're about to fall over. If it looks like they're about to fall over, you know, they can take like a little step forward to support their weight. I do really like this chest forward thing, but I just feel like there's far too much movement, this anticipation back. And so what I think maybe it's nice that you go down here and that you go up here, but I don't think you need, it doesn't read like a lot of up, so maybe you can move the center of gravity and the whole character up a little bit in this one, because this feels kind of like at the same height. just an idea. But this going back to go down and up feels like a lot. You know what I mean? So like I remember in class you were saying like, well, I don't really know what to do with the center of gravity at all the times, and that's fine. Maybe that's something that your reference can help inform you on. But or if it's not captured in your reference, you can just stand up and act it out at your desk, and really think like it's probably not a lot happening with your center of gravity, but it can't remain frozen in space. So that's kind of like the delicate balance, then the walk we have to walk as animators. So anyways, I know this is getting long, this thing, but hopefully some of these concepts are coming through and coming across. So I think ultimately my overall stuff here is just try to settle this down at the beginning especially, and not have the movements be so big, because we want to save those big things for later on in the piece, during the second half of this phrasing, right? And so one of the ways to settle it down is to have the cog do much smaller movements, and to have it be more, especially in the center of gravity, having that be more similar in place, and then trying to like live within kind of like a smaller range on the poses and the head angles and stuff like this. If the, it's fine to put a little head shake in here, and it's fine even have like a little forward dip on the head. I would just reduce the overall amount of it. It feels like she's hitting extremes at every opportunity. So let me move on to the next little bit, and we can continue this conversation in class. I know this may seem like a lot.
Superheroes. He believed in them. Superheroes. He believed in them. Superheroes.
Like you have superheroes here being pretty calm, and I think that that's a good choice. I think that's a good call, because it's kind of like the way the read goes is it kind of goes down into superheroes. It kind of loses some energy at the end of the sentence, which is normal, natural, and fine.
Love superheroes. He believed in them.
Yeah, so let me compare this move with
Dad loves superheroes. He believed in them.
Okay, so I like this gesture. It's like a nice variation on the previous gestures, because it almost feels like instead of having arms, it's like stamping up and down in a way. Like I imagine there's almost a foot stamp here. Okay. So this kind of cog movement and keep alive is nice. You know what I mean? It's like appropriate. So whenever I'm like animating a character, I'm always thinking about the cog, and when there's not much to do, like they're not running and jumping and it's like an acting piece, they can have their weight evenly distributed over both of their feet, and this is going to be pretty flat. And then, maybe there's times during a piece where I just want to like subtly push it over here, and then I'll subtly kind of dip. It's all like tiny stuff, to get a little play out of it that way. And then the same would be true if you went in the other direction. I'm sure you can imagine that, so I'm not going to draw it. But then also just like there's ways to accent things with like tiny little raises up and raises down. So let's see here. Like, if you need to anticipate a move, maybe it drops down just a little bit. But again, we're talking about tiny moves here. So I'm drawing all these frames on top of each other just to kind of illustrate the delta or the change between these. And then maybe, let's say, they pop into an up pose. Maybe the up pose is like here. It's not going to be that much higher. Just because these little movements are going to like really raise up and down the head and everything that you're doing, I feel like those have to be subtle. And on top of that, any kind of like torso rotations that you're doing are also going to really affect like the height, the perceived height of the head and face, which is really like where we want the audience to be engaged with. All right, so this move here, from here to here, that change feels great to me. That feels like the right height adjust amount. And this feels really big, and I think that this should be like a really big gesture. I think this pose maybe can be strengthened a little bit by trying to eliminate some of the foreshortening in this arm by like lowering the elbow, right? This one feels pretty good. Maybe raise this up a little bit to see if we can minimize a little bit of this foreshortening. Of course, it's okay to have some, but maybe something like this is the way to go. But this anticipation feels great. I think, you know, clean up these hand poses. This wrist break is pretty severe and feels unnatural, and so does that. I don't know about you, but if I try to like rotate my wrist up, you know, if this is my arm and this is my hand here, let's say thumb, blah, 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 and I'm trying to like rotate my wrist up that way, it really can't go much past flat. Like maybe I get a little bit of an angle on it like this, but not much. That's a really uncomfortable move for me to do. Even though in the opposite direction, I can get a pretty strong, so that's my thumb again, I can get a pretty strong wrist break going down, right? So this is something to pay attention, just like what the anatomy can do. So going up this way, teeny, 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 going down this way, you can actually get a pretty sizable angle there. So I feel like here we need to like straighten out these hands and just keep an eye out for that throughout. You know what I mean? Here as well, I don't know if you need to raise the arm up a little bit to have this kind of thing going here, but it's okay to live within a pose. You know what I mean? And here too, if we can get a little more indication of the break in this arm, it's just going to be a little bit more appealing design than to have it look totally straight. And it only looks straight because of foreshortened. I have no doubt that, you know, there is a bend in it. But anyways, getting back to the acting choices, this is great. I love this change, and even this like head lift up is fine. You know, once you pose the eyes, try to do an eye pass throughout to keep eye direction looking consistent at where you anticipate the mom to be. Like you just pick a height and just make sure all your poses are aiming at that height. This may not even be high enough because sometimes you'll realize that your head rotation is maybe too extreme to support head height like that. Let me take a look at this and see what I think. If it was more something like this. Yeah, that looks okay. You never want the pupil buried. So this is the top of the eyelid, and this is the pupil. You don't really want the iris part ever buried under the eyelid, right? That only happens in people if it's like a severe eye roll or some kind of, you know, eyes rolling back into the head. But normally like this black part, the iris, doesn't ever cut under the lid. So that will kind of limit your head rotation if you're keeping eye trace on, especially like a taller character, right? So that's great, but I feel like this is a bit extreme in what the body is doing here. I feel like you can kind of get the same gesture and idea by maybe like doing more of like a this pose, and then also not moving the head quite as much. So I'm gonna like just kind of clock the position of the head here, and then I'm gonna turn on some ghosting. Holy cow, that's a lot of ghosting. Let me lower this down to something maybe a bit more manageable. That's not enough ghosting, wouldn't you know it? Okay, so maybe in this forward pose, you know, you can kind of keep the, it feels like a little more earnest if the eye direction stays on the mom, right? And I kind of feel like it's like to lower the head that much it just feels a bit like she's not, I don't know. There's just something more natural about this. I think if you're going from this fist stuff You know, I really like this fist stuff. It's almost like she's pounding an invisible table or something here. I would leave the fist like you're doing. Like this arm feels successful to me here, where I'm seeing this fist, you know, but I'm losing it on the other arm. So I'd love to be able to like feel the fist here and maybe do a pose a little bit more like this. It feels a little bit more like powerful to me to have these out and that lean forward. It's like you don't get it. But mostly what this is doing is it should be like kind of dropping straight down more than it's like going forward at the mom. It feels really aggressive to go forward at the mom. You know what I mean? Which I think is what I'm kind of talking about, like rotating this chest back. It's even fine if you want to, here I'll go to the next frame. It's even fine if you want to do a curved back like that. I think what I would do, however, oh man, we're at 30 minutes already. Dude. Anyways, hopefully this is helpful. It's fine if you want to keep the chest and torso like this. Yeah, this doesn't feel nearly as powerful or as angry to me to have the torso kind of like rotated thusly. I think it feels far more, but maybe you can play with it and figure out what you find to be the most powerful, what you like the best. But anyways, I would just try to minimize like any kind of like forward at the mom progression and still have like, so the thing I'm saying is like when you come up, your torso is like this, right? Like this is again from the side. So let's say this is the cog. This is like the rib cage here. And we're getting like this angle, right? Here's the head. That is a sloppy Bagapi drawing that probably isn't communicating as well as I would hope. So let me see if I can amend that. Again, from the side. So your hips are doing something like this, your spine's doing something like this, and then when you express yourself in a forward manner, yeah, you can like, so the thing I'm kind of struggling with this is that if you keep like this kind of curve and just make it more extreme, right, when you go forward, I think that can work, but you have to keep the character like in balance and lean it forward and keep the head kind of like on mom, the target. I probably talked too much about this, but anyways, another way to go would also be like to try to hit the inverse curve. I just don't know if that's going to look as powerful, and I'm sure that you also don't want this character at this moment to look kind of like soft or weak. You know what I mean? So curving it this way, I don't know. That still could be a way to go. But this also looks fine. I would just minimize the motion. Sorry, it took forever to express that idea. And then here, you know, it's cool to go up into this, but again, just adjust the cog ever so slightly up or back or whatever. Change the rotation of the chest here ever so slightly back, probably, since this is a raising up. When you raise up the hands, maybe you want the shoulder, the clavicles just to raise up ever so slightly. You know, but we need, this part of the body feels like locked to me. Like I don't see any pixels moving or anything. And so we have to get, like this is a nice little tiny adjust. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So every time you're changing to a new pose, this is kind of what we need just to do keep alive and just kind of figure it out. And so stand up, perform it yourself, film additional reference if you need to, or check out your original reference to see like where these little bits and these little areas are. Because this feels like this is a nice little keep alive change in the cog and the torso and everything. So I really want to see that kind of stuff peppered throughout all the poses, so we really get a sense of how it plays. So I play it now because the motions are so big. It really seems to be like jumping around and everything.
Dad loves superheroes. He believed in them.
But I really like your posing and acting choices. I think there's a lot there. That's great. So let me take a look at the second half of this piece. Focus on mom.
These are not heroes. If they were, your father would still be here.
All right.
These are not
so
heroes.
Again,
if they
try not to focus on the mouth till we get the body nailed down, because I don't feel like the body is quite there, and I like all these. So I'm just gonna not comment on those, but I keep talking about like, hey, make sure to avoid this common mistake that a lot of students are making. Don't do this, and then you're doing it. It makes it kind of hard for me because I don't know. You just have to kind of trust me on this one. That with my my few decades of experience in this, that it's really important to get the body fully worked out. I know that you're anxious to get to the mouth and everything, and I'm anxious for you to get there too, but getting there before the body is in a decent place is not going to serve you, right? So like here, she's rotating the chest left and right, and I don't know why that's happening. I feel like this gesture should be more in the head if it's a head shake. I don't know why the whole torso would rotate back and forth. Maybe you're seeing something in your reference that you did that, but somehow I think we should eliminate these little rotations in her chest. And I don't know if you're rotating her from her cog, and that's what's transferring that rotation up to her chest. That's possible, but yeah, I don't feel like that's the way to go. I love this little down here on her cog. I think that that's great. Maybe you can give her a little like forward rotation on her chest here and some kind of anticipation. But let me see where. So it looks like she's about to go back, right? But then her body's rotating again. So, and then it rotates again. Okay, so let me talk about some of the bigger poses, because I feel like those to me are a little bit more clear about like what's happening, and I kind of understand that stuff. So I'm going to talk about the stuff that I feel like we can really get into those poses. Those feel like golden poses, or like the strong poses in this piece. Cool. Sorry, just marking keys here. Cool. I'm just going to say that's the pose. I ignore the head movement that happens before. Alright, then. Okay, so let me play through this again.
These are not heroes. If they were, your father would still be here.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the gesture where she slaps the comic book, because I feel like that's really successful. And right here she's saying,
these are not heroes.
Okay, these are not heroes, right? So I think it's nice to have the comic book here, like big front and center in the screen. These are not heroes, right? So I feel like, let me try to act it out myself. Let me listen while I act.
These are not heroes. If they were, your father would still be here. These are not heroes. If they were, your father would still be here. These are not...
Okay, so this is what I would suggest. She pulls it up. So this, and also if you want to make different acting choices, it's totally fine. But I kind of feel like if this is where it is before, let me switch to a brighter color so it's legible. If this is where it is before, when she goes, these are not heroes, I think it would be nice to maybe like have it come up like and back in space here with her arm. Just kind of like give it a gesture It's kind of like she's shaking it in a little way, like she's gesturing sharply and angrily with her hand. And then in this pose, you know, I would still leave it kind of prominent and out, right? So it's just a simple recoil of the book, and then it pops up, and then it pops back down. And then, so what to do with the other hand while she's doing that stuff, right? I think it may be best and maybe strongest. Again, maybe you disagree, which is fine. But to leave this arm kind of like down and not have it be in the screen yet, because then it's like everything's on that comic book, and I kind of feel like when she comes up to smack it here or kind of slap it or gesture to it, it makes it stronger that this is like hand is coming up. I would get the fingers together and try to clean up this hand pose, make it more appealing, you know, maybe a little bit more like a mitten where the fingers are together here in this anticipation, just for like simplicity here and legibility. Right, and then ultimately too, if we're about to smack it, I wish I could just grab all this stuff and translate it. It should probably even be like more of like a bent wrist pose, you know, where the hand is more like she's about to backhand that comic book into the Sunday funny papers, right? So maybe we get like a nice bend on that wrist. Something maybe a little bit more like this and the anticipation of it. So yeah, you'd have to bring it up, but like this is a good anticipation pose, and maybe this whole pose breaks silhouette over here, right? So this is the wrist, this is the arm, this is the thumb, you know, so we're getting it out of silhouette into her body, so it's not like stacked up on her body, right? And then when you smack it, I think like it's a little strange how the comic is being brought in closer when she smacks it. So when she's in this anticipation pose, wherever this comic is, you know, it's taken on a really weird shape at this angle, probably just because of that fold in her or whatever. But I'd kind of like leave it here, and then when she smacks it, you know, maybe her hand could even like go past it. I don't mind how you have it here exactly, but I feel like wherever the comic was in the previous frame, it should kind of be, you know, a little bit affected, but kind of in the same place, right? And it's a really big torso move that you have here on this smacking, but I think it should happen mostly within the arms. So let's see if this is like kind of the angle of the torso before. I would kind of leave the torso at that same angle. I don't think she needs to like bend over and look into it. It feels like that's another example of maybe where there's like a lot of pretty extreme movement happening, and it's distracting from where we want the audience to focus, which is like this smacking in the comic book. That's kind of like our key story point. And so if her head is like this and she's looking at the little girl, I kind of want to leave it in it, like her looking at the comic book I don't think is necessary. I think it kind of distracts from kind of like the conflict that she's having with the little girl. So I would maybe kind of like leave it at the same angle so that she, you know, determine where your little girl is, and like I guess her chin would have to tip up more to maybe be at the same height or same angle, but the idea is there that like that she's still kind of looking in the same direction. Like this is looking way down, so when I look at the eye direction on this pose, where's the little girl here? You could try to just like maintain that here. I mean, you're gonna have to lift the eyes up or whatever, or figure out what looks right there, right? And then the gesture for the line after that.
If they were, your father would still be here.
It's very similar to the daughter, which I don't mind at all, because like mother like daughter, right? Here, this is definitely like a stuck IK hand, so keep an eye out for that. You could turn all this into FK or IK, whatever you prefer, but here it feels like maybe just the cog is moving backwards and we're not really getting other adjustments on the torso. This feels really nice, this little cog adjustment, because it feels like maybe though we could use a tiny little touch of rotation there and settling back here. And if you do something like this too, you could even like introduce some drag when her cog moves backwards. So let's say we're like here and the cog goes here. Well, I'm like looking at where the corner of her shoulder is, right? So maybe it kind of remains the same, indicating that when you do this, what's happening is she's tipping forward a little bit. So the movement, so if this is the angle of her cog to her torso, when she moves backwards, it's like her torso stays almost like a little bit pinned at the top, right? And so that's like a little bit of drag, but it's not like this should ever go past where it was previously. But if it kind of is pinned or drags a little bit, you're really going to feel like it's organic. If she's moving down, maybe she's getting into this anticipation, so maybe she moves down this way just a little tiny bit to get up into this pose. And this pose, you know, maybe you can push this one a little bit more to like get her back or to get some kind of nice bend on her here. When you work out these fish shapes, see if maybe you can like get the fingers together here instead of having all this like space between them, and maybe to get those fists together, get that thumb kind of wrapped correctly. Like, man, when I'm animating and posing fists, I'm always just like staring at my own hand to see how it makes a fist. So when I make a fist, all of my fingers get like crunched together, and one of the ways that that happens is there's these bones in your hand, like here, here, and here, that go to these knuckles, right? So you have your pinky knuckle, that one, and that one. Each one has these metacarpal bones here. And so these bones actually like spread apart and spread and squeeze together, right? So that's how, like, maybe, I don't know if your rig has metacarpals in there to like get these knuckles tighter, because these are like little tiny skinny fingers, but maybe there's a way you can at least angle them or bunch them to eliminate some of the air in between there. And again, like watch your wrist angles and stuff, that they're not getting too extreme. But yeah, let's see. I feel like this is strong and a nice pose change here. I think maybe that's why I'm thinking like maybe we could lean a little bit farther back here, because here this is like a nice lean forward. But then it leans back really quickly, and I think that forward back, I think the back forward back is a little bit difficult. I'd much rather see in this next pose that she raises more up this way than back. You know what I mean? So if like this is where she is here, and we like this angle and everything, that the next pose is, can I see? This only goes drawings. Sure. What's the previous drawing? This one. So maybe it just, you know, bounces up a little bit instead of like going back, you know. So it feels more like a swoop, like this. So this is the back, this is the down, and this is the up, the third one. So back one, down two, up three, kind of that kind of motion where it's still kind of coming forward feeling, and also that'll give it a nice feeling of intimidation over the tinier child, I would think. And this is kind of a nice relaxing out of it, like you're relaxing the shoulders, you're bringing the cog down. This is all great. You know, it'd be nice to get like a little tiny head angle adjust. Maybe the chin comes up just a tiny bit, because when you get separation between the various parts of the body, it starts to feel much more organic and alive, you know. So maybe just tip the chin up a little bit or something, or down. It almost like doesn't matter, whatever the pose is that works the strongest. Anyways, Luis, sorry. I've had you here for like 50 minutes on this critique. It's a doozy, but I feel like, there's a lot of work happening here, and there's a lot of great stuff happening here. I would just like to see the body like fully cleaned up and resolved, and getting like a really strong pass on this stuff before we start moving into the phoneme shapes and everything. And I feel like we're honing in on it, but we're not quite there yet. So I don't know, take these notes to heart. Try to get it where when you play through it, maybe on like fours and everything, it flows, kind of has some continuity, and like doesn't seem like it's strobing around as much as it currently is by adding in like some breakdowns and stuff. But again, I want like these key poses like super well resolved, and these breakdowns like really thought through. And I know it's a lot of work, but if you want to get quality stuff, like we're gonna have to make sure that it's quality all throughout. But great work, great stuff. Yeah, 50 minutes. I think that's a record. This is the longest critique I've ever given. Not because the work, it's not a reflection of the strength of the work. I think it's just that, this is a long piece, it's ambitious, and I feel like there's a lot of great stuff in here. So keep it up, and yeah, email me with any questions. We can have office hours or whatever if you need them, and I look forward to seeing you in class. All right, bye.